I don't know how this colossal mistake was allowed into the pristine structure of my life. You dedicate years to building an edifice of success, respect, and perfect composure, and then you discover that the deepest rot lies not in the foundation, but in your own heart. My husband, Mark, a man whose ambition was matched only by his precision, gave me everything the world valued: security, status, and luxury. Everything except for one thing. He never truly saw me. And then there he was. Just 1 hour every morning. And that hour, that quiet, simple friendship, became the biggest, most unforgivable deceit of my entire life. If you have ever felt the hollow echo of a life perfectly lived for someone else, if you know the bone-deep ache of giving your soul's truth to the wrong person, if you know what it means to live a lie just to maintain a fragile, beautiful facade, then this story holds a mirror up to your own experience. But before I tell you how one small, wrinkled napkin became the final, brutal sentence, the sentence that sealed my fate, I need you to do one thing. Subscribe to the channel right now. Only here, in this quiet space, can I finally be honest about the cost of that choice. Click the bell icon, join this small, secret community, and don't miss the conclusion to this slow, quiet drama. My life, as a whole, was Mark's ultimate project. He, the acclaimed architect, had designed our existence with the same exacting standards he applied to his towering glass structures. I am Diana, 38, a director of business development at a major consulting firm. I am the complement to his success, the final piece in his meticulously planned composition. Our home, a multi-million-dollar testament to modernism in the city's most coveted district, was a place of astonishing beauty, filled with expensive imported light. Yet, that light was cold, bouncing off vast plains of marble and concrete, illuminating every sharp corner but casting no warm shadows. We lived in a fortress built on mutual benefit. Our marriage was a successful merger. Mutual respect, impressive net worth, and a shared calendar full of philanthropic galas and investor dinners. Intimacy in our home was a functional requirement, scheduled and fulfilled with the same efficiency as a business meeting. Our conversations were clinical, focused entirely on optimization, achievement, and asset management. We were partners in life, equal captains on a colossal ship, but we were never, ever, intimate soulmates. I spent years perfecting the art of being the perfect accessory, the well-dressed, intelligent, and impeccably supportive wife. The consequence was that I felt like a perfect, expensive object, a sculpture that enhanced the room, but which must never be touched or allowed to feel. My true vital self, the girl who once loved to paint and read poetry, was slowly suffocating beneath layers of expensive cashmere and calculated composure. This suffocation was the root of my rebellion. It was quiet, pathetic even, but it was mine. Mark believed that every morning, from 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., I was engaged in strategic planning at a satellite office, preparing for the demanding day ahead. This was my carefully constructed cover story, my alibi, my only lie. It was a golden-plated permission slip for temporary escape. In truth, I drove 5 miles in the opposite direction, seeking refuge in the Book Nook. This small, independent coffee shop was chaos incarnate compared to our home. The air was thick with the scent of old worn paper, roasted coffee, cinnamon, and the lingering earthy scent of the printing press housed in the basement. The walls were rough brick, the furniture mismatched, and the people were wonderfully, unpretentiously real. There was never anyone I knew there, never anyone who knew Mark or my status. Except for one person. His name was Eric. He was the co-owner, his hands perpetually stained with ink, a slight, almost shy man in his late 30s. He never looked at my diamond, never asked about my profession. He simply saw me. Our connection was forged in the silence of observation. Eric knew my mood before I reached the counter. His insights were terrifyingly accurate. He knew that if I ordered the cardamom latte, I had slept well and was ready to face the world. If I ordered a strong black espresso, it meant anxiety had kept me restless. He saw my emotions like clear, legible text, rendering my performance of perfection useless. He saw the tight knot in my shoulders, the faint tremor in my hands on days I felt truly broken. During that single hour each morning, I gave Eric what Mark hadn't received in years: my genuine, vulnerable self. I shared my childhood dreams, my fears of growing older, and my deep longing for simple human connection. He simply listened, often leaning slightly on the counter, his gaze steady, accepting my vulnerability without judgment. That simple act of acceptance was the most powerful form of intimacy I had ever known. In his presence, I could finally take a breath, dropping the heavy mantle of Diana, Mark's wife, and simply be Diana, a woman who was profoundly exhausted. I knew this was a betrayal. It was intimate in a way that defied physical definition, because I was handing over my very essence, my soul's truth, to another man. I was cheating on Mark with my attention and my authenticity. I felt like the most despicable liar in the world, precisely because this emotional infidelity felt 10,000 times more significant to me than a careless physical slip-up ever could. Every time I returned to the cold perfection of our home, I felt like a counterfeit, frantically trying to reapply the layers of my flawless facade before Mark noticed the cracks. The psychic weight of this double life became a crushing burden. I started to resent the expensive jewelry Mark gave me, seeing them as expensive manacles, constant reminders of the price of my silence and complicity. Then came the inevitable fatal turning point. It was a miserable late October afternoon, and I was utterly broken. Mark had, once again, cancelled our long-planned anniversary trip to close a huge deal. He bought me a new flawless diamond pendant as compensation, a beautiful, glittering payment for my continued quietude. I drove to the coffee shop, feeling like a hollow vessel, silently screaming into the polished leather of my car interior. Eric saw it all. He didn't even ask for my order. He just set a steaming cup of mint tea in front of me. "For quietening the storm," he said, his voice low and personal, devoid of judgment. "You look like a city after a devastating snowfall," he added, his voice low and personal. "Everything is perfectly white and quiet, but beneath that layer, nothing is alive. And you are freezing." I couldn't fight the tears anymore. They welled up, stinging my eyes. I leaned across the counter, trembling, and he performed the single gesture that shattered my entire structure of self-control. Eric reached out, and with the utmost tenderness, he gently brushed a stray strand of hair from my wet cheek. It was a brief, warm, incredibly careful touch. It carried such a profound, deep-seated empathy and compassion for my pain that in that solitary moment, it became the most explicit and forbidden act of closeness. This touch was not about lust. It was about acknowledging my existence, my suffering, and my human need. He saw me, and he reached out. I recoiled, pulling back as if burned. My heart hammered against my ribs, a furious, trapped bird. I knew. I must leave now, permanently, before I lose control entirely. I did not go back to the coffee shop the next day, nor the day after. I understood that I had crossed the ultimate boundary, and now I had to choose. Torch my entire perfect life and leap into the financial and emotional abyss, or retreat back into the fortress and live forever with the permanent shadow of this truth. I resolved to talk to Mark. I would confess not to another man, but to the consuming void that was killing my spirit. But Mark moved first. He came home early, beaming with triumph. He said he finally understood how wrong he had been, how his obsession with work had overshadowed our life. He promised I was now his priority. "I will become the man you want me to be, Diana," he told me, describing how he had hired a landscape architect for us to build the garden together, the one I'd always dreamed of. He genuinely intended to fix me with new plans and grand gestures, yet even in that moment of apparent vulnerability, he never asked what I truly desired. He only sought to optimize his performance as my husband. He was undeniably sincere, but his words felt like a fresh, immaculate blueprint he intended to forcibly overlay onto my shattered, messy soul. He still did not see me, only the ideal wife he was trying desperately to restore. I realized I couldn't sacrifice his success, our status, and my own lifelong security for a ghost of hope and an uncertain future. I wasn't brave enough to burn the fortress down. I chose security. I kissed his cheek, whispered that I needed air and fled. Straight back to the book nook. I had to have closure. The coffee shop was locked and dark. A simple handwritten sign on the door read, "On vacation." I checked the small mailbox, and there was a single small familiar paper napkin, folded carefully. From Eric. Diana. You came here not for coffee, but for permission. And I know what you chose. You didn't choose me. You chose security. The city has turned its lights back on. You no longer need the quiet I can offer. Start building windows in your fortress yourself. It will be hard, but it will be yours. And at the very end, just 3 words, etched in ink, that echoed the judgment of the universe, sealing my fate. I saw everything. I stood on the street, clutching the napkin to my chest, its rough texture a painful reality check against the smoothness of my silk blouse. I had lost both the lie and the truth. I finally understood. My greatest betrayal was the years I spent betraying myself. I returned to my ideal home. I still live here with Mark. He kept his word. We built a beautiful garden. He sincerely tries. He asks about my business plans. He buys me gifts. He fulfills all the functions of a loving husband. He fulfills all the functions of the architect of our perfectly constructed life. And me? I keep that crumpled napkin in the small, discreet interior pocket of my most expensive coat. Sometimes late at night, when Mark is deeply asleep beside me, a man who touches me but cannot feel me, I retrieve it. I hold it, feeling the faint residual warmth of that single moment of understanding. This napkin is my confession and my punishment. I chose security. And now I pay for it with a solitude that feels far more profound and acute than the emptiness I felt before. I have perfected the art of pretense again. I smile, I plan, I support Mark in public. But in my soul, I am forever the frozen city where the lights were not turned on by my husband, but by another man who, having recognized my pain, simply walked away, leaving me with the hardest truth of all. I must now live with the consequences of that imperfect closeness which was my only authentic breath of air. In life, the choice is rarely between 2 people. More often, you have to choose between 2 versions of yourself. And that choice, believe me, is always the most painful.